Hey, folks, welcome to episode 10 of A Pebble in a Pond podcast. This episode is going to be about the concept and the idea of respect. Now, why am I doing an episode about respect? Well, for me, I think that it is a fundamental concept that, as far as the whole aim of this podcast and of all of my other social medias, the whole idea is to try to find ways to further yourself and make your position and your place one of influence and one where you can really begin to make changes in the lives around you and your own life as well. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by understanding and showing respect to those around you. So I wanted to make this episode so that everybody could have an idea of what exactly that means, what that entails. Because I think that the base concept of respect, I think that people say it, and I think that people have a loose understanding of it, but I don't think that anybody really ever thinks about it. I don't think that it's something that is necessarily, uh, not a lot of people spend a lot of time digging into it themselves. So I thought maybe we would just spend, 45 minutes, an hour going over it, talking about it, and really trying to understand exactly what it means and what it means to not only respect others, which is what we're going to start with, but to respect yourself, which is what we're going to finish with. I think that before we get to the music, though, I think we'll start with a quote that will set us up for what we're going to talk about first. Leo Tolstoy, I should say, respect was invented to cover the empty place where love should be. And I think if you just take a second, you think about that, you start to realize that respect is a extremely important but often very misunderstood idea and feeling. And I think that people sometimes will look for respect when what they really want is love. And sometimes when you can't get love, you'll just take respect. And with that, let's start the music. Now we're gonna have a moment of full transparency here. I mentioned this in the last episode, and actually a couple of times on some of my TikToks. The reason why I wanted to do this episode is because the concept is important to me, and the subject matter is important for becoming the pebble in the pond, if you will. And I think that we can really have a very powerful impact on those around us if we understand how important respect can be and the easiest and best ways to show it. That being said, the reason that I was moved to want to do this episode much sooner than I probably would have is because uh, I have had multiple conversations with, I guess you would call them former people in my life, where they accused me of being disrespectful, and I take exception to it. I did take exception to it, and so I wanted to touch on it because while I can definitely see where people are, could accuse me of that, I think that I think that for me, and I will get to this, and I think that I'll kind of go back and forth on it so that you can kind of see how I'm weaving it in and out of the conversation. I think that for me, respect and the definition of exactly what that means is not always. It doesn't always line up with, I guess, the dictionary definition of it. And what is the dictionary definition of it? I mean, do you know? Well, let me tell you. The dictionary definition of respect is, well, there's two definitions for the noun usage of it. A feeling of deep admiration for someone or something elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements. That's one definition. The other one, and probably the one that's we're probably going to be talking about a little bit more here, is due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of others. Now, both of those obviously are, they kind of line up in a certain way, and there's through lines that you can kind of see, but we're really going to focus on that second one, the due regard for feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of others. Admiration that is elicited from someone's, achievements or whatever term you'd like to use there. That it's all fine and good, and it is absolutely something that we should all have. But that's more of that's definitely more of an opinion based. Like there's a lot of people out there that respect Eminem as the greatest rapper of all time, and then there's a lot of people out there that don't respect Eminem because of some of the things that he said in some of his songs, and both of those people can show respect for his accomplishments or a lack of respect. So some people respect him as the greatest rapper, and some people will respect him as the greatest white rapper. You see what I'm saying? Like that's all very subjective, and we're looking for a little bit more objectivity in this than just people throwing around opinions. Except for my opinion, because I've got the microphone, so you will listen. I'm just joking. You don't have to listen. When I think about respect, for most of my life, and so I would say probably since I was, I don't know, maybe 18 or 20, when I first really started to give it some thought. The quote that has come to my mind was and it's not even really a quote. It's just something that I remember hearing on a comedy special. Harry Anderson, the judge on Night Court, he had a comedy special called "Hello Sucker," and in one of the parts of the show that he did, he's kind of just listing off some like little words of wisdom. But he says in that special, he says, I have always been taught that respect is something that you give to get. And that has always stuck with me. And I know that that's kind of an old saying, and he didn't coin that, but that's where I first heard it, so that's where it kind of stuck with me. And that is something that I genuinely believe, with all of my heart, with all of my being, that respect is something that is not necessarily, you don't give respect just freely, I guess you should say. I'm not really sure how to put this, but I think that for me, respect is something that you give to somebody, and you then wait to see how it's returned, and that will determine if they continue to deserve respect. I think that's kind of it. It's kind of like the first taste is free kind of thing. Like you really respect is something that you really want to be. It's a resource to a certain degree, and you want to guard it. You want to make sure that you're not giving people that don't deserve respect undue respect. You don't want to waste your time on that venture, because there's a lot of people out there that you'll come across that are disrespectful, and they treat you poorly, and they don't deserve your respect. You don't need to respect them, because they obviously are not giving any respect, right? Like that's the whole point. If people want to be respected, then they need to give you that respect. Now, I try to live my life in a way where, everybody that I come across, I give them that initial respect. I give them, I wouldn't say I'm deferential, but I give them that moment. I try to give them that time, and I try to be present and aware and pay attention, and I try to give them the respect that they are due as just whoever they may be. And then I just wait and see. I just see what they do. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that you'll come across in your life that will feign respect, and they don't really mean that. And you might not see that. So it's just something that you want to be aware of as you go through your everyday life. Who are the people that are respecting you? Who are the people that are showing you respect? Who are the people that treat you well? And then you kind of allocate what you have to give to those people. You really focus on them, and you try to make the extra special effort towards them. And that, like I said, that quote is, respect is something you give to get. So when you first meet somebody, give them that first little bit, and then see what they return. And as soon as they start to show that disrespect, then they've got to earn it back, right? Like they're at a deficit at that point in time. They're going to have to start to do something to really earn it, because respect isn't like a lot of things. Like you can be kind or you can be nice to somebody, and you're not really worried necessarily about anything in return for that. You can be empathic and relate to somebody and understand their feelings on a topic and their emotions on a topic. But respect is something that it really needs to be reciprocated in the same way that it's given. And you see that a lot of times in every relationship you have, whether it be a work relationship, a friendship, a romantic relationship. If the respect is not mutual, if it's not both ways, then it will always break down. It is impossible for one person to carry the burden of respect for two people. You can for a short period of time, but those relationships will always break down if respect is not reciprocated in an equal fashion. And I anybody listening to this, just think about it for a minute. Think about any work relationship you've had. Think about any team building exercise you've had in school. Think about any friendship that you've had where once you start to feel disrespected by your friend, that friendship is now officially on the rocks, right? Like you stop wanting to be around that person. You stop wanting to, treat that person with respect. You stop wanting to, in general, it sours that entire friendship. And once again, this is exceedingly true in romantic relationships. Going back to what I had said before, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode was because someone who was in my life, somebody very near and dear to me, I don't know if I would call it necessarily a romantic relationship, but it was pretty as close as you can get. Recently, within like a week or so ago, told me that I was not respecting her. Well, her wishes were that I stop talking to her about some of the poor decisions that she had made and some of the people that she's been keeping in her life that were causing her harm, in my opinion. And I mean, honestly, pretty much anybody objectively would say these people are causing you harm. But she does not appreciate the fact that I'm voicing that. She considers it to be disrespectful that I'm voicing that opinion. And she's not wrong. She's not wrong. It is disrespectful. However, what is lost on this in that moment is she doesn't understand that at no point over a course of many, many years was she showing me respect. She was lying to me multiple times. She was, creating entire backstories and fabrications, living in an entirely made-up world that I had no idea about until relatively recently. And so, when you're kind of all of a sudden being steeped in an understanding that your worldview was wrong about somebody, and then they're like, "Why don't you respect me?" It's it's a tad disingenuous, Like, how can you possibly ask me for respect when you haven't shown me any? You've done this and this, and you've snuck around, and you've lied to me about these things, and You haven't shown me the respect that is necessary to then ask me for respect. Now, obviously, at some point, I can just be like, whatever, I don't care. But that's not the same thing as respect, right? Like, I'm not being intentionally disrespectful. I am just not extending respect because none has been shown to me. I'm not actively trying to, be a jerk. I'm just not stopping myself from trying to, voice my opinion. And I see there's a really fine line there, and I want to make it very clear that you don't want to be like this, right? Like, the way that I'm behaving in this scenario is one of somebody who is hurt, right? Like, I trusted this person. I love them very much, and they betrayed me. They betrayed my trust. They betrayed my my idea of who they were as a person, and they continue to do so proudly to a certain degree. And it just jars you, right? It just takes you out of an understanding of your whole worldview to a certain degree. You start to question, who else is doing this? What else can you trust? And that's what a lack of respect can do to you. Like, at any point in time, had she shown me respect and just said, you know what, I'm going to live my life this way, and I'm not going to lie to you about it, and I'm not going to hide it from you, that would be showing respect. I may not like what she had to say, but it's showing me respect to just be honest and forthright and come to me and say, this is who I am, accept it, or don't. But she didn't do that. At no point did she do that. So that's just blatant disrespect the entire time. And I think that is where this kind of intertwines with some of the other things we've talked about on different episodes. It's important to understand that, honesty and kindness and empathy and these other concepts that we've already discussed, all of them can be tied to respect as well. Being honest with somebody and no matter how painful that honesty can be, that is a sign of respect. It is incredibly easy to lie to somebody and tell them whatever you think they want to hear, to tell them the easy truth or the easy lie instead of the hard truth. But that's not being respectful. That's not thinking about them as an actual person with their, own thoughts and feelings and ways of processing the information. That's just you making the decision for them. You saying, "Oh well, you're too weak to hear this, so I'm gonna lie to you about it," and that is just blatantly disrespectful. And that's essentially what she did to me. She was telling me things, and this, you'll hear this all the time. And this is, people will say this. You'll hear this in real life. You'll hear this in they say, "I didn't want to tell you the truth. I was too afraid to hurt you. I didn't want to hurt you." That is so wrong. I mean, there's no other word for it. That is just the wrong way to think. That is the wrong way to be. There is no greater disservice you can do to somebody and more disrespectful thing you could do to somebody than to lie to them to save their feelings. Because what happens when you do that is you have to lie to them over and over and over again. And so the longer it takes for them to discover the truth, the more it's going to hurt. You take a one moment of pain where you say, oh, hey, I'm going to go do this thing that you don't like, or I want to, be with this person who is bad for me, and I'm just going to do it. Like, that's a painful moment. But instead you lie about it, and then it takes a year for somebody to find out about it. That's a year worth of time that you've now been hurting that person. You've been disrespecting that person. You've been lying to that person about this one moment that you could have just been honest about. And the thing about it is that, like I said, keep in mind through everything I talk about, respect is something you give to get. So if at any point in time, and obviously I'm using her as this example here, if she had come to me and said, "This is what I want to do, can you respect my wishes? Can you support me? Can you I don't want you to be mad at me, but I really want to do this kind of thing, or please understand where I'm coming from, or any of these ways of discussing it. Um, the, things like the entire everything would be entirely different, because that's coming to somebody, showing respect, saying, hey, your opinion matters, but also, it also, I want this thing a lot. And that's what respect is. Respect is going to somebody, and in this situation would be going to somebody and saying, I really want this thing in my life. I really want to be able to do this thing. I really want to go to this place. I want to, but I also want to show you the respect of, telling you about it, and I want to tell you how important it is to me. Now, if in this case it would be me, but this is a generic scenario that I've heard of multiple times in my life, and I'm sure that many of you that hear this it'll play out in your head. You'll say, oh yeah, that happened to me, or oh, I understand this. But then it's on the person. If you go to somebody and you're honest and you say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. I know that's not something you're really into or something that you're really a fan of, but this is what it means to me. And then they turn around and they're like, no, you can't do that. Well, then they're being disrespectful, right? Like that's how that works. You take the burden of being respectful and you put it on them. And then you can play off of that. You can say, oh, well, they disrespected me, and I don't appreciate that. That doesn't mean you go and you lie and you sneak and you cheat. That means that you then say, okay, well, I feel disrespected. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this thing I want to do. And you tell them, I don't like the way that you talked to me. I don't like the way that you behaved when I told you this. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I'm sorry that if it hurts you. I'm sorry if it upsets you. That's not my intent. I'm not trying to disrespect you. I am trying to impress upon you that I really, this is what I want, and you have to accept it. This is something that I desperately want. Now, if you're talking about, a romantic relationship, which is how this started, it's a little bit different, because then you're partners, right? Like, you should be discussing these things together. It should not be a unilateral decision on either side to do this thing. It should be a discussion, and it should be something that, you maybe even have to go back and forth on a little bit. Neither side should, quote, win, right? Like, if there is a disagreement, then you try to reach a compromise. You try to say, okay, well, go do this, but also just be careful about this, or, just keep this in mind, or, I hope you have fun, but just remember that, this could be a problem, or that could, things like that. Like, there's ways of discussing it where you both can have what you want. And all too often you see situations where communication breaks down because of the lack of respect on one side or the other, where you just don't believe that your partner or your, friend or whatever it is will be able to handle it, or will be able to give you what you want. And that's really one of the key things here, right? Like, a lot of times people will go into a situation, they'll go into a communication, they'll go into whatever it may be, and they'll have a preset idea of what it is they want. They already have, exactly what the outcome is, and they will refuse to come off of that outcome, so they try to manipulate the situation. All of these things that you're doing in your head, all of these ways of maneuvering, they're all disrespectful, because they're all different ways of being dishonest. So just go into a situation, go into your communications, and this isn't just with romantic partners, this is with friends, this is with just random strangers as you try to communicate with people. Go into any of these without the burden of trying to manipulate and maneuver people into the outcome you want. Instead, let them respect somebody enough to let them give you the information based on what they know about it, their opinions, and their understandings of it. And then they can return and give you their answer. And then you make a decision based on what they said. But don't try to maneuver people. Don't try to lie to people to get your way. Don't try to, get people to give you one specific answer because it fits exactly what you want. Like, you don't have to do that. Now, a lot of times, and this is complete and total honesty on my part, a lot of times I'm pretty good at arguing, and I'm pretty good at making a point. So many people, most people actually in my life, that's one of their big complaints about me, is that I when we get into a discussion or an argument or whatever it may be, I I tend to be more influential, and I tend to make my points stronger. And I'm not trying to justify that. I'm not trying to say that that's necessarily the right way to be, because I literally just said that you don't want to go in. But what I think if I were to defend myself here, I would just say this. One, um, I'm not arguing, or I'm not discussing these things necessarily to be disrespectful. I'm doing it to make sure that the person that I'm talking to, in almost every case this is the situation, that they've thought about it, that they understand what they're doing, that they understand exactly the decision they're making. I want to make sure that they know where they're possibly going to get in trouble. I want to make sure they know exactly, they've thought about it from every angle, so that they can then decide if they want to do it or not. That's usually where it comes from. It's not really me having a preset outcome, or me having an idea, or me trying to manipulate or maneuver these people. It's usually just, okay, did you think about this? Okay, but did you think about this? Now make sure that you understand that these outcomes are all possible if you make this decision. And, obviously some of them are negative. Some of them are negative outcomes. And whenever you tell somebody that there's a possible negative outcome of something they really want to do, they'll take it as you trying to get them to not do it. And that's not really the case. It's just I want you to understand that, this could happen. So that's one aspect of it that I would say if I were to defend myself. Now, once again, I'm not defending myself. I'm just saying, these are the reasons I do it. This is not a defense, and it's completely legitimate that people have a problem with my influence. That being said, and this is gonna this is gonna sound a little I don't know, maybe have a little bravado to it, I guess. But get better at arguing. If you don't want to lose to a lawyer, then be as good as the lawyer, I guess is the point. And a lot of people really hate me when I say that, and I don't blame them. I mean, I'm good at arguing, and I am influential. So a lot of times people just don't give me that option, which is disrespectful, and it bothers me, and it sucks. But at the same time, I don't really blame them in certain situations, because they know the outcome. They know that if I have the ability to sit down and make them think about it, that initial impulse that they're moving on, I want it, that kind of goes away, and they lose that momentum, and then it becomes, oh, well, I don't want to do it now. So I'm a bit of a killjoy when it comes to that, and I know that, and it's not something that I'm necessarily proud of. But like I said, it comes from a place of genuine concern and care for people, and also, if you don't want to be manipulated and maneuvered with words, then maybe get better at using your words. I know that's a jerk thing to say. I shouldn't say that, especially not on a podcast. But I mean, I'm here to be honest. I'm not here to lie about it. I don't have to prove anything to anybody here. I mean, we're all working on ourselves, and I'm trying to get better. So the best way to, and this goes for everything, by the way, what I'm about to say here. The best way for you to get better at to strengthen your weaknesses is to be able to first identify your weaknesses. And my attitude of get better at arguing is a problem, and I know that I shouldn't think that, but it's difficult. It's really difficult when you spend your whole life arguing to not just be like, well, get better at it. So I am working on it, and I know that I need to, be more respectful and understanding. And that was really the reason why I brought that up, and why I wanted to illustrate that. Now that I'm through that part, and you guys have heard me be a jerk about it, I want you to understand that I said that all on purpose. That wasn't just me free flowing thought. I mean, I know it was, and it sounded like it was because but I went into that to try to illustrate that all of us struggle with the concept of respect. Respect means a ton in my life. And even when I'm having a conversation about how important respect is, I find a way to be disrespectful. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at here? Like, it's very difficult to maintain a level of respect at all times. And it's something that we all are going to struggle with as we move through our lives. So I'm not ever going to ask somebody to try to be perfect on this podcast or on, TikTok or anything like that. All I can say is that it is a constant struggle to be as good as you can be, and showing respect and appreciation is something that we should be working towards. And I fall short a lot. But like I said, we're working on it. And I wanted to illustrate just how short I can fall. Saying the things that I said just a minute ago, those are not respectful ways of thinking or believing. And I have thought about it, and I am struggling to correct that attitude. And I wasn't joking. It is very difficult for me to not just immediately think that way. It's becoming easier as time is going on, and I'm becoming more conscious of it. But it is still a struggle. Whenever I get in an argument with somebody, whenever I get in a discussion with somebody, and they start to get upset because I'm, quote, winning, I have to kind of pull myself back and be like, well, what is the point of this? Like, they're not going to be able to out-influence me. They're not going to be able to out-argue me. And I know they're not going to be able to. So why would I put that burden on them? Why would I say, what I said a minute ago and, get better at arguing? Why would I do that? I know they're not going to be better at me at it than I am. So why would I do that? It's just me being disrespectful. And we're all working on it. We all got to get better. And I am a very, very, very good example of that. So with all of that in mind, I want to talk about a few things that you can do that will help strengthen, or not really strengthen necessarily, really, that you can do to exercise respect, that you can show respect to people. Things that you can do in everyday life, in conversations that you have, in moments that you have with friends and family and strangers, that will convey the level of respect you have for them. It's really important to understand, though, that respect is something that, for lack of a better word, it multiplies. Right? Like I've said multiple times now, you give respect to get it. Right? If you want respect, then you have to give respect. And that keeps going, right? It's not just the one time. It's not just a one-time transaction. If you give somebody respect, they will respect you back. And then you receive the respect that they're reciprocating, and then you will respect them more. And what that does is that builds trust. Respect towards, two people respecting each other is the fastest way to build trust. And I think that is probably the closest thing to a universal truth that you can possibly have. That translates into the animal world as well. That is not just humans. Animals that respect each other, that show respect for each other and boundaries and things like that, it works the same exact way. It becomes a situation of trust. Now, when you are building that trust and you're showing that respect, there is, it feels good to be respected. So, along the same lines as showing kindness and things like that, giving somebody respect that they are due is a very good way to show kindness, and it makes people feel good when you respect them. And then it also, when you are in a state of mind where you're respecting somebody, it's usually because they are showing good behavior. It promotes that idea of them, being trustworthy and them being respectful. And so you reward that by obviously reciprocating, and this goes both ways again. So it promotes you both to be as good as you can towards each other, and then obviously anybody else that's in this circle of respect and trust. The other thing, and this is maybe even the most important thing that respecting somebody does, is it allows somebody to feel safe and comfortable in their skin. It allows somebody to feel that they are being accepted for and treated as an equal for being themselves. Because really, we all have things that we do, or that I should say it like this. We all have things that other people do that we don't necessarily appreciate or value. But if you can respect somebody in spite of those things, if you can show them that those things don't bother you, that goes a long way towards them feeling okay about themselves. And obviously, now let me just be completely transparent here. Obviously, there's times when you may want to, I don't want to say withhold, but you may want to consider how you're respecting somebody. If somebody's got like a bad alcohol problem, you don't want to embolden them by treating them as if everything's a-okay, right? Like you want to make sure that they understand that. So there's a limit and a certain way that you can show respect, where you don't have to necessarily sign off on somebody's bad behavior, but you can still be respectful towards them. I hope that makes sense. I was having a hard time phrasing that. That being said, now that we have a really solid understanding of exactly what effects respect can have, let's figure out ways that we can really show it. That one of the easiest ways, and probably the best way, if you have the ability to do this in a face-to-face conversation, is to really, well, they call it active listening, right? Like, you really want to be an active listener. You want to be able to look somebody in the eye. You want to be able to allow them to finish their thoughts and then engage with questions. You want to be able to not only ask questions that are pertinent to what they've said, but you want to be able to maybe even go, like, somebody will say this and this and this happened at work, and this and this and this, and you ask them a few questions, and you say, okay, so let me make sure I understand. So this happened, and you basically give them what they said back, and then they can confirm. And what that does is that really does build an understanding in that person's mind that not only were you listening the whole time, but that you were engaged and you appreciated what they were trying to convey to you. That builds a lot of respect. That builds a lot of trust. And it's a really easy way of doing it, because if it's somebody that you obviously care about, then you should be engaged in those things anyway. You should care about those things. Another really good way, and this works very well with strangers if you can get to this point in a conversation, is try to find something that you have in common. If you're in line waiting for, whatever, you're at the ATM waiting for something, and you see somebody has Nikes on, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. You understand that there's like common ground. You can be like, oh man, I love your shoes, and that's just being kind, that's just being nice. But if you strike up a conversation, that conversation, as long as it's done in a respectful way, and you can bring other people into it. You can, it's something that you can just do organically and naturally, that just kind of creates this feeling of camaraderie and respect and trust. And people really, really appreciate that. And that goes right along with, something else, which is actively try. And this one is difficult in today's world, especially considering how polarized the world is, especially in America. Actively try to understand the people that you're talking to. You may not agree with them. You may be complete and total opposites in a lot of things. But try to understand where they're coming from. Like it's impossible to bridge the gap unless somebody is willing to, take that first step. And part of being a good person is, or trying to become a better person, I should say, is trying to understand where other people are coming from, trying to understand exactly how they arrived at where they are, and then try as best as you can to meet them there. And if you can't get where they are, just meet them as close as you can, right? Like, I don't want to give I don't want to give too many incendiary examples here. They're going to piss off too many people, so I'm not going to do that. But I think that most people that listen to this can kind of imagine a scenario that I'm talking about, and you may not be able to bridge the gap fully, but if you can get a little bit closer than you were at the start of the conversation, then you've accomplished something. I would say that along those same lines, though, is try to when you're trying to understand where they came from, understand the emotion that goes with it. Like try to show some empathy for how they arrived there and why they are there. Like understand the emotion behind it. I think that can be kind of lost in that, or sometimes they kind of blur together, those two things. But there is a small differentiation there. Like understanding logically how somebody arrived where they are and understanding emotionally how somebody arrived where they are two different things. And if you can reach both of them, then you're well on your way. But usually we can only do one or the other. Most people can only do one or the other. So it can be difficult. If you can get one down, if you can really start to try to understand somebody's path, like how they arrived where they are emotionally or intellectually, then you are doing yourself a service. Let's think. What else can we do? Here's another one that I think is maybe even the most important thing here, and that is apologizing. When you've been wrong, when you know that you have either hurt somebody or you wronged somebody. And this goes back to the honesty thing. A lot of times people will try to hide when they were wrong. They won't fess up. They won't own up to it. They'll create excuses. They won't stand in front of the jury, if you will. They instead they try to hide away from it, and they'll lie about it, and they'll create all of these reasons for it, or they'll say, well, I didn't want to hurt you. And instead of doing that, you can just say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I didn't understand, or I don't know, or I didn't see your side of it. I'm trying as hard as I can. You don't have to get it right? Like nobody's expecting you to get it right every time. But if you get it wrong, admit it. Not just for the person that you wronged, but for yourself. You can't grow unless you know your shortcomings. You can't grow unless you know where you need to grow. So it's important that you're able to say, oh yeah, that was me. I did that. It shows a level of empathy and recognition of flaws and faults that most people will look at and be like, oh, well, I was not expecting an apology. Thank you. And the reason they weren't expecting the apology is because it's so rare for people to have that kind of self-reflection, and honestly that kind of self-care. Like it really is a very powerful statement to apologize and mean it. And oftentimes, I'm sure you've heard this before. I know that I've heard it before, where you'll hear somebody say, they apologized, and I just respected that so much. I just respected the fact that they would own up to it. I just respected, and that can be the start of something beautiful. If you own up to something like that, when you said something wrong or you did something wrong, it's really important. Let's see, what else can we do? I hesitated to mention this one because I feel like it shouldn't need to be mentioned, but I'm doing a podcast about it, so I should mention it. It is really important when you're trying to show respect to be grateful to people and show gratitude is a better way of putting it. You really want to be able to, when someone shows you a kindness, when somebody pays you a respect, like I said, return that. Be grateful. Make sure that you're saying thank you and tell them how much you appreciate it. And even if it's something as simple as holding a door open for you, or don't listen, just take this as a Bible truth from this point on. If somebody holds the door open for you, I don't care if you're a man, a woman, a dog, a parrot. I don't care what you are. You turn around and you say thank you. You don't have to. You don't have to be, bend the knee to them. You just have to say thank you. You be respectful, because what they're doing is they're showing you a respect. They're showing you a kindness. And all you have to do is say thank you. And then if there's another door there, grab the door for them. It's a very simple dance step that I see happen all the time. Every time I go to Wawa, I hold the first door. The guy that I hold the door for holds the second door. And without fail, you always notice the guy that doesn't hold the door, right? Like everybody sees it, and everybody knows that guy's the asshole. Like, just don't be the asshole. Just show some gratitude and some kindness, and that's a great way of showing respect to people. Another thing, and this is kind of I don't know, it's necessarily connected to that, but another great thing is you can, when somebody, like, this is great for the workplace, when somebody is successful at work or at school, celebrate with them. Like, tell them how proud of them you are. Tell them good job. Tell them keep going, or any of those things. And even if it's not something at work or school, if it's something as simple as your kid got A's, or whatever it is, you celebrate. You make sure that they understand how important, or that they understand how important it is to them, right? Like, that you understand how important it is to them. That's a great way of showing respect to somebody that maybe you hadn't thought of before. Like, and it's one of those things where, like, if it were you, if you had gone out and, I don't know, got your real estate license, and, two of your friends were like, oh, we should go get drinks or something and celebrate. But then, like, your mom and dad didn't say anything, or your coworkers didn't say anything, or you start to hurt, right? You want people to celebrate those things with you. You want to be recognized for those achievements. And so the people that do recognize it, immediately you feel better about them. You trust them more. You know that they respect what you did. They support your decisions. And even if they don't necessarily support you getting your real estate license, which I don't know, maybe it's the way they're looking at it doesn't matter. But the point is that the understanding that they appreciate, or that that they appreciate what you've done, that is a big deal, and that is a great way of showing respect towards somebody. And I think the last thing that I'll mention is, you really want to try to affirm people in general. And what I mean by that is, when somebody states their opinion, when they talk about, what's important to them, on my TikTok channel, I get this a lot, where I'll state something that I believe in, or a way that I behave, and the reason why. And it's nice on that platform, because I can almost immediately get, somebody that says, yeah, that's great, or, this is good, or, whatever it may be, or I really appreciate you saying this, and those comments are extremely affirming. Like, it's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to make this podcast, not knowing what people think of it, not knowing, if people agree or disagree with me. Pretty much the only person that ever gives me any feedback on it, is one of my friends and my mom. Like, but I'm still gonna do it, right? Because I'm getting affirmations elsewhere. So I get people all the time that say, oh, I loved what you said here, or what a great way to say that, or things like that. So those kind of things that you can do to affirm other people, whether it be online or in person, and let them know that you appreciate what they're saying, you appreciate what they're doing, you appreciate how they're behaving, anything that you can point out. Those are great ways of showing respect to somebody. Those are great ways of showing somebody that you really care about what they're doing, and that you notice a difference as they're doing it. I think for the rest of this episode, which we're just about to wrap it up, I think what I want to talk about now is perhaps the most important part of respect, and it's definitely the most important part of the concept of respect for this podcast and for what I've been trying to do with TikTok and this podcast. And that form of respect is self-respect. I cannot possibly begin to describe or explain in enough words just how important self-respect is. It is the heart of everything I'm trying to accomplish, because it is impossible for you to respect others if you don't respect yourself. Not to continue to bludgeon the dead horse that I did earlier, but the friend situation that I was talking about earlier is a very, very good example of that. It is easy for somebody to look at me and say, "Why aren't you respecting me?" And my retort or my response is, "I will respect you when you respect yourself." And what I mean by that in this situation is, I will respect you when you are able to look at the decisions you've made and genuinely say, okay, this was a mistake. Oh, I shouldn't have done this. Oh, or, just really give yourself a full audit of how well your decision making has worked out. And also, how well you're able to determine the people that you brought into your life. If you're not able to understand that, you're bringing in people that are hurting yourself, that are hurting you and the people around you, and innocent people as well, then you perhaps you're not really respecting yourself, right? Like you don't bring people like that into your life. You don't make mistakes like that. I call it a mistake, but it was a conscious decision. You don't make those decisions if you respect yourself. You don't want people like that in your life if you respect yourself. You only allow that if you don't respect yourself, if you don't have that understanding of who you are and what you want and what you really need. And then when somebody like me comes along and says, "Hey, you're better than this," that the fact that somebody will respond to not even criticism really, but more of a, an attempt to be positive and say, I believe that you're better than these people you're hanging around with, and I think that you should strive for more. And you say, "No, screw you, I don't ever want to talk to you again. Stop disrespecting me." That, and I know that it sounds like I'm, just harping on this one instance, but I'm just using this as an example. This is a great example of somebody who doesn't have any self-respect, but yet demands it from other people. You can't do that. You have to begin to understand that all of these tools and methods that I talked about, all these things that you can do, and all these concepts, they all start with self-respect. You have to understand. Now, I'm going to say this, and this is really, I need to make sure that it's understood. You have to love yourself, and you have to respect yourself. Now, a lot of people will tell you, find out who you are and find out all these things, and that, there's always this like kind of drive to uncover these things about yourself. But the reality is that we are always evolving, we are always changing, and we are always growing. At least we should be. So it's not so much that you want to find yourself, because oftentimes when you find yourself, what you're finding is what you were like when you started the search, not then. The search changes you. The search creates a whole new you, and you're not always going to be able to keep up with those changes. You're not always going to be able to keep an eye on where you are in the present. And that's important to understand. Like, you're always growing, you're always learning, you're always changing. And you're never going to necessarily know exactly who you are in the sense that most people mean that. So just understand your own voice and listen to yourself. Listen to your own wants and your own desires, and understand that sometimes your wants and desires are selfish and childish and bad for you. And then other times they're literally your inner self screaming out because you need representation, and you need to be understood, and you need camaraderie and appreciation, and there's a big difference between those things. All right, like, you have to be able to filter them out. And so when somebody says, you have to know yourself, and what I mean when I say you need to respect yourself is being able to kind of discern between those two sides of yourself. All of us have dark urges. All of us have things that we want to do that are selfish and, self-serving, and in the end hurt other people and ourselves. And, like alcohol and drugs and poor life decisions, these are things that you do out of a place of pain usually. So as long as you have an understanding of where the dark thoughts, the dark inclinations are coming from, then self-respect is, and this also comes with some discipline as well, is being able to say, no, I'm better than this. I'm not going to fall back on these vices and these the basest forms of myself. I know these are part of me, and I can't escape that, but I'm not going to embrace them. Instead, I'm going to embrace the idea of loving. I'm going to embrace the idea of being positive. I'm going to embrace the ideas of helping others. And I'm not going to just do selfish things. That, to me, that is what defines self-respect, because all of us can fall prey to, like I said, the basest inclinations, the basest influences. We can listen to the people around us tell us that it's okay for us to do these things, that it's, hey, just be yourself, and, just go ahead and you can't always let yourself go ahead. You have to have discipline, because unfortunately everybody has, once you not to quote Star Wars here, but once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. It really is true in a lot of cases. Once you start to let yourself go down a certain direction, it's really, really hard to change that, because you adopt those mannerisms and those behaviors as part of yourself. You say, well, this is what I want. You don't understand. You never bother to take the moment to say, why do I want this? And that's where a lot of people end up going to therapy and end up having to discuss these things with a therapist or a psychiatrist. Is, you get into these patterns that you create for yourself out of pain, and you adopt those behaviors as part of yourself. And the reality is that those are not truly representations of what you want to be, and so you end up, self-loathing, because you don't want to do those things, but you don't know how to stop, right? And this goes for all sorts of behaviors, not just drugs and alcohol, but cheating, lying, just in general, just being, selfish and demonstrating those behaviors repeatedly. That comes from a place of pain. That comes from a place of self-loathing. That comes from a place of not respecting yourself. So the first thing you can do is you can say, from now on, I'm not going to indulge in these things that have been distractions, or that have been hurting me and the people in my life. And even if they were fun and they were good at the time, I have to understand that I only did them for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like, you do a lot of self-searching, and I implore those of you that maybe are going through these kind of things, that are hearing this, to talk to somebody, talk to a therapist, talk to, whoever you need to talk to, because you don't want to continue to live with this albatross around your neck. And if you don't understand that reference, I'm probably not going to explain it here. But, you don't want to continue to live with that burden. You really want to be able to free yourself and find yourself, find your voice, find what it is that you can do to begin to truly respect who you are and who you want to be, who you're growing into. It's so important. It's so important for everything that you're trying to do. If you're listening to this podcast, then I have to assume that at some level you're trying to better yourself. And you're trying to be more than you are now. Because I know that's what I'm doing, and that's what the whole point of this podcast is for me, is to try to say these things out loud so that I hear them as well. I'm not speaking to anyone on this podcast from a place of authority. I'm speaking from a place of trying to figure it out myself, and trying to research it, and trying to learn it. And I have done way more reading and way more research over the 10 weeks that I've been doing this podcast than I had in the 50 weeks before. So I hope that as you hear this, and as you take it in, that you really can understand and at some level appreciate and even respect that we're in this together. This is not This is not just you. This is you and I working on these things and trying to figure it out together. And I hope that this episode about the concept of respect will lead you to the understanding that I do respect you. I do respect you for listening to this, and I do respect that you are open to the ideas that I've put forward. And I hope that you will respect what I have to say. Bruce Lee once said, "Always be yourself. Express yourself. Have faith in yourself. Do not go out and look for a successful personality and duplicate it." You can look all around the world. You can find millions of people maybe that look like you. And you'll find people that, maybe hold your same values. You'll find people that talk like you. You'll find people that sound like you. You'll find people that smell like you. But you won't find anybody that has all of those attributes all at once, as you do. And you are the only person like you in this world. Why would you spend your life trying to be somebody else? Have more respect for what you are and who you are, because you're the only one of you, and that makes you infinitely important and infinitely special. Carl Sagan once said that when you think about the fact that we are made of the same thing as the rest of the universe, that in a way we are the universe, and we are an embodiment of the universe and the universe's way of seeing itself. So remember that as you go through this life. Be respectful to yourself first, and to others, and to the world that you're in, and the animals and the plants and the flora and the fauna and everything else that you can be respectful to. Be respectful to the ideas. Be respectful to the concepts around you. And understand that you are a work in progress, and you will remain a work in progress until the day you die. And that's the way that life should be. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. We're going to wrap it up now. I have a few different ideas going into next week, and I'm not really sure. I haven't pinned down exactly what I want to do for next week. So if you're not following me on TikTok, please go ahead and do that. I will be announcing the subject in another day or two after I have a few things I want to tweak before I can really decide, and I haven't had a chance to do that yet. So I will announce the subject in the next day or two on TikTok, and then next week, or you can just roll the dice and just listen to the random episode as far as you're concerned. That's fine too. But if you want to know what the episode is about, follow me on TikTok. It is pebbleandapond.podcast on TikTok. So if you haven't followed me there, go ahead and jump in there and follow me there. Thank you again for listening, and take care of yourself and take care of others. Have a good one.